I am Tom Morrison. I am from the Metal Treating Institute, not to be confused with the Mental Treating Institute. We're only one letter off. And before we get going, I always share this little story with everybody. It's a speech impediment I have, so just so everybody knows what kind of communicator I am. So my brain, like many executives in here, thinks faster than my mouth can talk. And let me give you what that looks like so you know what to look like as we go through this nice panel discussion. So about 15 years ago, I started a singles group in Jacksonville, Florida, and I had all the church, the leaders there and all these people. And I was going at the end to make my close to get their support for the program. And I noticed in the back my wife was laughing at me. I knew she was laughing at me, not with me, because I didn't say anything funny. So as I got to the end, we got over here, and I always like to hear critiquing about how did I perform on stage. And I asked my wife, I said, baby, I noticed you were back there in the back laughing at me, not with me. What was so funny? She said, Tom, what we love about you when you speak is you'll make a glaring error in something you say, and you never look back, you never apologize for it, you never skip a beat, you keep running right on. I said, what did I say? She said, you got to the end, and you looked at all these people in there that you wanted to help support your cause, and what you meant to say was, I'm so grateful that you are here, and what you said with all your might and passion was, I'm great, and you are here. So there you go. So we're going to get off on the, you follow that, we're going to be in good shape. But hey, I'm excited to be here to talk about the future. Because the future for everyone in this room is moving at light speed like we've never seen it before. There are three dynamic forces coming at you that we're going to talk about and the panel is going to elaborate on as we move into it. Because what the future used to be, we used to be over here, and the future was kind of hanging out over there. And in our strategic plans, we could do maybe once a year. We could look at the SWOT analysis, and we could walk towards the future. And eventually we would get there like, wow, we've arrived. We kept up with it. But nowadays, you cannot rest doing planning one time a year in your business, in your plants, your manufacturers, your distributors. It's imperative that you're doing it every quarter, if not more than that, because the future is running at you faster than you can ever imagine, and that's what's causing a lot of people a lot of pain. So let's talk about fear for a second. So IBM did a study 2 years ago, and this Jenna McGregor wrote an article on it, a blog post on it, about what are the biggest fears of the top 5,000 C-suite executives. They interviewed 5,000 CEOs and C-suite executives of Fortune 500 companies. And the number one fear of every single, of 60% or more of them was the Uberization of their economy and or their industry. This industry here, I think, has got some Uberization about to go on. And Uberization is the implementation of a new technology, a cheaper way, a faster way, a more efficient way of doing business. It's happening in every industry. I've done this talk so many times, and every single industry has an Uber arriving on the scene in their industry. So it's imperative that you keep, if the top execs in the world are worried about that, it's imperative that everybody take a look at it and be looking around and looking fast. So these radar screens up on the board here, I think these are the most important things you could have in a business meeting. And actually, I think they're the most important thing you can have in your company in the lunchroom. Because nowadays, before you had your vice presidents of change, your vice president of marketing, sales, y'all got in a room and y'all said, what's coming at us? What's the threats? What's going to put us out of business? What's going to keep us from supporting our customer, our families? But nowadays, because of social media, popular mechanics, everybody down from the janitor that sweeps the floor to the top executive, everybody kind of knows what the threats are. And I think companies are doing a big disservice by not empowering every single, I'm talking 100% of your employees, to walk in the lunchroom and take this, because every day you walk into your business, there's a radar going, boop, boop, boop. And every day, something's getting closer to changing your business model like you've never seen before. And many of them are things that you will never, ever see. So I think you ought to have this visual inside your lunchroom or an employee area where everybody has an opportunity to write down, I read something that made me think this could be a dramatic impact that could put us out of business or change the way we do business. And the three things here to the left, these are the three dynamic forces that are causing change at such rapid pace like we've never seen it before. And the problem is some of it are things that you can't exactly see right off the top. Emerging technologies, those are kind of easy because you read about those and you see those every day. Consumer buying habits, this is the big one. Consumers, because of social media, can immediately see a product that they want and they like it, and they can change instantly and change a whole entire marketplace in a heartbeat. So consumer buying habits and demographic shifts. I'm going to show you a chart here in just a little bit that's going to explain to you so much about workforce, the economy, healthcare, everything going on under the sun, as well as your world. So these are the three big things you need to be looking for. So let's talk about just one piece of technology, one emerging technology that when it becomes real in mass, is going to dynamically change tons of industries out there, and none of them are typically good. You look at self-driven cars. That sounds, I would love a self-driven car. I hate driving. My wife loves it. I hate it. If I could just get in a car and go, take me to work, and I could work or look on my phone or call my kids while I'm doing it, I would love it. Self-driving cars, look at this. Those cars talk to everything under the sun, and they do not crash. Will they crash? Yes, but at probably a dynamically lower rate than before. Well, look what's going to happen in so many industries. If cars don't crash, body shops literally are going to have to find another way to do business. You look at liability attorneys. If no one crashes, no one gets sued. I stood in front of the American Bar Association, showed this slide, and you could have heard a pin drop. The personal injury attorney market typically will go away. You look at medical care, about 30 to 35% of revenues in a hospital sometimes for certain cities comes from auto accidents. It's a shame, but that's the reality of it. Now here's a big one I just realized not too long ago, organ transplants. Many people don't realize 20% of organ transplants come from auto accident victims, and there's already 100,000 plus waiting lists to get organs right now. So imagine when that 20% has gone away, the amount of the waiting list is gone. Now, the good news for that is that Disruptive Technologies can giveth, it can taketh, and it can also giveth. 3D technologies come along, and I think that's beginning to evolve in your industry. 3D technologies coming along that will allow them to actually 3D print a heart, a lung. So transplants, you will never have to wait for a transplant years down the road as we get to that. You look at DUI schools, driving schools, car companies, sign companies, people. Self-driven cars do not have windows. Some will, but they're developing with no windows in them. So the sign companies are going to have a problem. So I showed this slide just to simply to let you see how one little piece of technology that is implemented around your world, and it may be something that's developed for that industry, but it could seep in and have a dynamically shift in your industry. And you need to be looking as an industry at what could those technologies be. So let's look at consumer buying trends. If you do not go out and look at trendhunter.com on at least 3 to 4 month basis, you're making a big mistake. Trendhunter.com is a site that's a group that is developed solely to go study consumer buying habits. And they do industry videos for about 2 minutes on healthcare, manufacturing. Everything under the sun has a video on what the top changes are coming to it in the future. And every year, they do one video of the top 20 changes coming into consumer behavior habits. And if you look into the future, here's what some that they released last year that have a really big impact on a lot of different places. You look at the ones I want you to focus on here are swap commerce, people swapping stuff. There's actually people that swap food, they swap shoes, they swap tons of stuff. And then the routine rental. The biggest example of routine rental, a lot of people knew like Airbnb and those, but think about this. I asked one time in a meeting, what is the craziest thing you've ever rented online? And a father stood up and he says, I rented Legos for my kids. I didn't want them in my house all the time. They get in the vacuum cleaner, and I wanted to try and change their behavior. I didn't want access to them. So I rented as a site where you can go rent toys, and they rented Legos. Well, think about what renting one box of Legos to that industry means for the plastics industry, for a whole host of industries that go into that, the metals industry, the paper industry. 100 families renting one box of Legos. That's 99 companies that did not buy the box of Legos. That's a huge implication. Question is for you is what is going on around you that's going to have that kind of implication? What kind of consumer buying habits are going to happen now that 5 years from now you will see sales begin to deplete and you don't know what it is because you weren't looking for it. So you need to really study those. Now here's my favorite graph of all time. This is the graph of all the birth rates since 1905. It explains so much, and the two things I want you to walk away with today is the rule of 32 and 72 and workforce development. The rule of 32 is you look at the millennials. They're just now turning 32 years of age. If any of y'all are into big high-rise condos or any of that marketplace, they're going through a record growth right now. Why? Because the average first-time home buyer just turned 32 years of age. National Association of Realtors study says the average first-time home buyer is 32 years of age. It used to be 7 years ago, but because of economies and tightened restrictions on loans, younger people with debt can't get them. So there's a 7-year now longer time frame for rental. That's why you're seeing apartment complexes go up like crazy in most every city, because there's 7 more years of millions of people renting condos coming into the marketplace. So that's a big deal. Anything that 30-year-olds buy that impacts your industry, you want to try and get involved with it because they're coming in mass. 100 million of them are going to come here the next 20 years. Now you look at the baby boomers. Baby boomers, the rule of 72. The oldest one just turned 72. In 1977, the largest generation was the baby boomers, and the 80s and the 90s were unlike any decade as far as growth in our life in terms of material and economic growth. Why? Because the largest generation was in the primary earning years of their life. The millennials are now 32 in 2017. The 20s and the 30s of this century are going to reshape the economy, and you're going to see growth, I believe, because of that marketplace. You're going to see growth like crazy. That's why you're seeing commercial buildings going up everywhere, which is good for this industry. You're seeing condo units going up, which is good for this industry. So I think your industry has the opportunity to see a lot of a growth over the next 20 years. Now, workforce development. This is one that everybody's running around. I would bet everybody in this room, like the last 40 industries I've talked to, finding people who are teachable, trainable, qualified, and have a good work ethic and want to work. One guy described that person as a unicorn to me one time because he said they don't exist. They don't walk in the door. And so the question for you is, as you look at this chart here, you see that big dip called Gen X? They're 33 to 53. They're in the primary working years that make up most of the workforce of our life. And there's 10 million fewer of them than there were baby boomers. That's why we have such a shortage of workers. I tell everybody, there are no more workers. And the question we're going to wrestle with up here in this panel when we talk about the channel and distribution is how do you grow your business 40% the next 10 years? That's just simple math, 4% a year. We all like to grow at 8 to 10. How are you going to grow your business 40% over the next 10 years without hiring very many more qualified people? You need to figure that out because there are no more people. There are none. They're the young people, but they got to train them to get them in, and the baby boomers are starting to retire, and we've got some up here on the panel that have tapped into that market as well. But the actual workers in the room, they're not. We're at 4.4% unemployment right now. And so how are you going to get those workers? A lot of it could be artificial intelligence. You got to look at robotics, all that kind of stuff. So this chart really explains a whole lot when you look at it. So a lot of people say, well, Tom, where does Uberization come from? Where does these things come out of nowhere to impact us? I know, 10 years ago, people probably weren't talking about electronic locks. I love to go up to my house and click my smart lock, and the door opens, and I go inside. Love that. And I think the millennials are going to love that. But that removed a lot of things, and it removes three things. There's three things you need to look in your business plan, in your operations. Where does friction, anxiety, and stress exist in your plant? I think we've been asking the wrong question to all kinds of business owners out there. The one question we ask everybody is, what keeps you up at night? Well, what keeps me up at night is not what's wrong with my business, it's what I'm frustrated with. And you don't make change towards improving your business when you just deal with what you're frustrated with. What you really need to ask yourself is, where's the friction, anxiety, and stress that's keeping us from being the best we can be? And sometimes new technology is developed that helps reveal friction, anxiety, and stress in our company that we didn't know existed. When I look at this talk is not about Uber, but my talk is called What's Your Uber, the expanded version. And I didn't know I did not like taxi cabs. I hate taxi cabs until I got into an Uber. When I got into an Uber, it immediately revealed everything I hated about riding in a cab. And I've not looked back 4 years later. So you need to be looking at your friction, anxiety, and stress in your companies. And here's where it all exists. You need to go to your team and say, guys, in the world of delivery, when we deliver our product, where's the friction, anxiety, and stress in our lead times, getting stuff to the customer? Our product, is there any friction, anxiety, and stress in dealing with our product? Is our product user-friendly? And believe me, user-friendly is a big, huge thing. If you look down your Facebook app and see all the things coming out in terms of new technology, it's removing friction, anxiety, and stress in everything that you do. The experience, the customer experience. I know this is an industry that's safety and locks and stuff and hardware, but where's that customer experience? People want to be engaged in the experience of doing business with anybody, even if it's in manufacturing. Your operations. Do you have 5S? Are you lean in your operations? Believe me, you're going to have to lean out when you ain't got any more employees to hire the next 5 years if you're going to grow like you would like. Work culture. We're going to talk about work culture up here a great deal. I've got a slide with the 6 things that every millennial is looking for in a future workplace. And it's not bad things, it's things that need to happen for you to change. But the question is, are you willing to make the changes to bridge that gap? And then your overall business model. That is what this panel really is about, is the overall business model of manufacturing, distributing of your industry. How's it changing, evolving, and what are the roles of each party, and how's it going to move forward in the future? So these are the key things that I think you need to walk away with. That there's one thing you need to do when you leave this and go back to your operations is you need to take this list right here and get your team members involved. And you need to go back to this slide right here and ask yourself, I want everybody to write down on a piece of paper where they feel the friction, anxiety, and stress is involved in our operation, all these 6 areas. So with that said,